Hi everyone and welcome to another edition of Rock Sports Showdown. I'm your host, Kristen Karam, and with me are our fantastic analysts, Cameron Collins, Ryan Noblet, and Big Dave Miller. It's been a pretty interesting week in the world of sports, so we should get started. The Pittsburgh Penguins are currently riding a 3-game losing streak, but are still atop of the Metropolitan Division. Ryan, what do you think about the Penguins right now?
I think that there's nothing really to worry about. The Penguins are still, obviously, at this point, the best team in the Metropolitan Division. I mean, there might be a little bit of worry because the Penguins have gone through stretches the past few years where they've had 10-game winning streak, 5-game losing streak. It's a really streaky kind of team in a sport that's usually not that streaky. It's usually pretty consistent. But at the same time, I think if they just need to right the ship a little bit. They play their way. The other teams have been kind of forcing them their way, like the Avalanche the other night. We're forcing them to play their way, which, as we saw with the conference finals last year, the Penguins struggle a little bit at doing when another team forces the Penguins to play like them, when it's not quite the Penguins' flashy style. So I really don't think there's anything to worry about. I think we need to give it a little bit of time just to see how it goes, see what happens against Carolina tonight, and go on from there.
I mean, you're right. There is nothing to worry about. But like in the long run, it could worry. You do need to worry a little bit just because of the backup goalie, Jeff Zakhoff, has not been able to get a win in his 2 starts and allowing 4 goals in one and 5 goals in the other to the Florida Panthers, who are kind of a mediocre team, and then the New York Islanders, who did make the playoffs last year and probably going to finish higher than an 8 seed this year. But for now, there's nothing to worry about. They're playing Carolina right now, and hopefully they can just bounce back and get a win there with Fleury at the net. But this is going to be a long stretch if they don't get a good backup goalie for Fleury, and they're going to have continuous 3-game losing streaks, 4-game losing streaks, maybe even 5, not get the 10-game winning streaks because you don't have the good backup goalie play. So once the Penguins can get a good backup goalie, or if Jeff Zakhoff can improve his game, for now it's not a problem. It could be in the future.
Basically, the way I look at it is regular season, it's really not that I mean, as long as you make the playoffs, like sports like hockey, basketball, where your top 8 teams in your conference make the playoffs. I mean, as long as you make the playoffs, regular season's thrown out the window. You can be the best team in the league in the regular season and then go out in the first round in the playoffs. So, I mean, like you said, they're still atop of their division. They're still going to make the playoffs, be a decent seed, and then it really just comes down to how they play in the playoffs. I mean, you look at what seed were the LA Kings when they won it a few years ago?
They were 8.
Exactly. 8 seed. Won the finals. So, I mean, really all that matters is that they get into the playoffs. So, I mean, 3-game losing streak, still atop of their division. I don't really see that much to worry about. I mean, you've still got Crosby, you've still got all these talented players. Everyone goes into a slump every once in a while. I think they're going to be fine.
And there are backup goalies out there, too. I think of Ilya Bryzgalov, who the Flyers are actually still paying. So if they would pick up Bryzgalov and then Bryzgalov would beat the Flyers would be paying for losses, which, as a Flyers fan, that's a little disheartening to know that there's players out there like that. I mean, every team in the NHL kind of has one of those because of how the NHL's contracts have been. But there is good goalies out there. I mean, Bryzgalov, arguably a good goalie. Sometimes he's a little bit of a head case, but there's good goaltenders out there. And I think Vokun should be back by the end of the season unless he retires because of his injuries were a little severe. But they did give him a time frame, I did read. I think it was 3 to 6 months from when he sustained his injury. So he should be back by the end of the year, which would be good for the Penguins, especially if Fleury can't get going in the playoffs again like he has in the past.
The thing with the Kings, they were the hottest team going into the playoffs as a number 8 seed. They could have been a higher seed if they kept riding that streak. And last year with the Blackhawks being the best team, they had Corey Crawford and Ray Emery. Like, Corey Crawford played out of his mind, and Ray Emery was the best backup goalie in the NHL last year. So when you have a good core of players there with an amazing lineup like the Blackhawks have, when you have good goalie play, it makes all your other players shine.
Yeah.
The Slippery Rock football team traveled to Edinburgh this past weekend and returned with a 44-20 victory over the Fighting Scots. Dave, what are your thoughts about Rock football right now?
They're in a position to actually now go to the Peaceout Championship. They're going to be playing Cal U this weekend, and Cal U, same conference record as Slippery Rock University. This is going to determine who could possibly go to the championship against either Bloomsburg or Westchester. And I think with this lineup of players on the offensive side for Slippery Rock, it's going to be Slippery Rock going to the championship this year because just you looked at the IUP matchup and all the hype there. in that matchup. It was IUP, number 7 in the nation, top defense in the nation, and Slippery Rock, top 5 offense in the nation, like in all these major categories. And Slippery Rock blew them away. Cal U, not as good as a defense and not as highly ranked and with a worse record, but still has a pretty good defense, and it's always a little chippy battle on the field with these two teams. Last year, Slippery Rock pulling off the upset, 28-26. And the year before, holding Cal U 17-3 on homecoming. And honestly, I think Slippery Rock can nail it down this week and go to Seton Hill, put down another game, and then just sit pretty for the championship game.
Yeah, I mean, usually you say there's a trap game. I don't think Seton Hill's much of a trap game. They've been losing by 60 points each game. I mean, I really do feel bad for them, though, because they are new to the conference. But I think Slippery Rock's defense has been getting a little better each week. Well, maybe not a little better each week, but because against Clarion and Edinburgh, they did give up more points than they did against IUP. So,
but I think
they did shut down
definitely
IUP.
Improved from the beginning.
Yeah,
of
it's
the
improved
year.
from the beginning of the year, and
Yeah.
they were giving up 30 points a game. I mean, it didn't really matter because they put up 40 in the first half in each of those games anyway, but except the Gannon game, which is their only loss. But with Gannon now, Gannon lost last week or 2 weeks ago. I can't remember which. I think they lost the last two, actually.
Gannon
lost the last two, and that's what put
IUP
Slippery Rock back in the
IUP
driver's
also
seat.
lost to Edinburgh
Right.
the week we played Clarion.
And that's what put Slippery Rock back in the driver's seat. I do think they have a very, very good shot. Especially if they beat Cal, they'll definitely make the PSAC title game, I would think. But I think both teams from the East are pretty strong contenders. I believe Bloomsburg is actually currently ranked 7th in the nation, if I'm not mistaken. And Slippery Rock, I believe the poll comes out tomorrow, but they were ranked 22 on the D2 football poll last week, and they got 33 votes on the coaches poll. So it's likely they'll be ranked this week. I can't imagine why they wouldn't be. It's a top 25 team, even if it's down in the 20s.
I think I saw that they were ranked 24
Okay.
on the actual NCAA rankings. But like you said, with Bloomsburg, they're still undefeated, and also Westchester. Yeah, Bloomsburg and Westchester, they still have to play each other. So I mean, that'll pretty much be the deciding game of who will take on, either Slippery Rock or whoever takes that side of the PSAC. That'll basically decide the championship game, and as we know, that'll take place either at Bloomsburg or at Westchester, because it goes back and forth every year. But as for how the Rock's doing, I mean, Barstool's been lighting it up all year. He's got his big-time receivers in Shadman and Amos, and then he's got a ton of supporting receivers, and I think that's a big part of the success of the offense is he's got Shadman and Amos who can make those big plays downfield, and that requires defenses to pay a lot of attention to them, and it allows other, not necessarily less talented, but just less targeted guys, he'll hit them coming across the middle, or and they'll make up some extra yards after the catch, and it just opens other people up because they have to pay so much attention to Amos and Shadman. And then with the trio of running backs with Shamar Green, Brett Crenshaw, and Teddy Blakeman getting Player of the Week honors, rushing for 140 some odd yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, it's just every week it's like somebody different. I mean, Barstow always puts on a great performance, but it's either Green lit it up against Clarion. The one game Blakeman had 5 total touchdowns. It's always somebody different stepping up and being the big playmaker. And then, like we said, that defense. It's been a complete turnaround from the beginning. Like you said, they might not be getting better every game, but there was a big change from the first few games going into that IUP game. They shut IUP down. We shut Clarion down. We shut Mercyhurst down. So, I mean, ever since that, that defense has been keeping teams around that 20-point mark. So if the offense does struggle a little bit, they're still in it. They don't feel like they have to put up 40-some, 50-some points to win. But
I think it's kind of that team you see at the beginning of the year. It looked like that team who thought they could contend but weren't quite sure of themselves yet.
Yeah.
And then the IUP game, everything did a 180.
Yeah,
They're the team that they
definitely.
think they can win now, and I think that's the most important part of this
Absolutely.
season.
Yeah.
As long as they can just avoid the turnovers, because it's the second straight game Barstow threw.
And that's exactly that's been it, and it's I think a lot of it is also where those turnovers happen, because like against Clarion, their scores came on the muffed punt, punt that they took over in the red zone, and the one interception that they took over in the red zone. Those were their only points.
Yep.
So I mean, realistically, the defense really didn't give up. I mean, there wasn't much they could do backed up against Norgo, and they even stopped them once on the other interception. So I mean, the defense has been really impressive lately, and I think that's going to be big going up against Cal and possibly in that PSAC championship game.
The NBA season is going to kick off tomorrow night, and of course it's going to feature the Miami Heat. They're going to take on the Chicago Bulls as Derrick Rose makes his regular season return after missing all of last season with a knee injury. Cameron, do you think the Heat are going to have a three-peat?
I definitely do. I mean, I don't think there's any other team out there that really matches up with the Heat at all, especially with the addition of Greg Oden this year. If his knees can hold up, because that was their one facet of their game last year that they were lacking in. I believe they ranked 30th in rebounds last year. They were a small team, but they were fast and they were talented, so they ran that fast break on everybody, even though they couldn't get a ton of rebounds. But if they have a guy like Greg Oden out there who can play significant minutes and pull down a bunch of rebounds for them, that's going to make them all the much better. And I really don't see, maybe Chicago, Chicago challenged them last year, but that was pretty much all on the back of Nate Robinson having that breakout performance in the playoffs. Derrick Rose has been impressive so far in the preseason, but aside from Derrick Rose going off and Chicago just clicking on all cylinders, there's really no team that I see can take them down. There's just nobody.
When you look at it, there's really the Heat, and then there's a couple other teams. You got the Brooklyn Nets, the Bulls. They're all pretty.
Brooklyn Nets.
The Brooklyn Nets. I think the Brooklyn Nets are a really good team.
Oh boy.
I thought they were. Last
think
year.
you are.
My dark horse argument.
I thought the Nets were a very strong team. However, they don't. I think they lack that consistency. They just got back to the playoffs after struggling for so many years at the end of their tenure in New Jersey. I think that's going to affect them a little bit. But I think really the teams that can threaten the Heat are out west mostly. I think the Clippers this year.
Maybe, yeah.
Actually. I know
Rivers
they're usually the laughing stock, but they don't have the Lakers to worry about this year.
They've
been
played way better than the Lakers last year, and then bringing in Doc Rivers is a big upgrade for them. But I do see what you mean with on paper the Nets do look like they should be a very talented team, but we've seen teams before that on paper should be really good.
The New York
and
Knicks
they're
the
not.
last 4 seasons or so.
So that'll all be whether they produce or not.
Really, the only team that I think actually has a legitimate shot in the Eastern Conference to beat the Miami Heat. But besides the Brooklyn Nets, but they just need to be consistent. And first time with all those players together, I don't think they're going to, but they have a shot. I think the only team that has a legitimate shot is the Indiana Pacers. They have the same exact team basically as last year. They're a lot bigger than Miami, that really helped them to get major rebounds and getting with them again. Danny Granger coming back now, getting fast break points. The Indiana Pacers are no joke.
Paul George is starting to look like
Paul George. You got Tyler Hansbrough,
top 5 player,
and Roy Hibbert getting the boards underneath.
Hansbrough is actually not on the Pacers anymore. He is with the Raptors.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
But
say you didn't see the video of him in Meta World Peace almost get in.
No, I don't keep up with those crazy videos. But just Indiana has always been a very just broad team, just be able to a strong team to get rebounds and then just run a consistent offense, maybe not fast break, but get wide open looks on the outside. And if you need to dump it down low and get an and one from Hibbert and the other boys down there, and they'll get you that.
And they have challenged the Heat the past couple of years. They've pushed them in the playoffs before, and I do think they're a talented team. They've got, like I said, Paul George is developing into one of the best players in the league, and they've got a lot of good supporting players on that team. They're a bit underrated.
Yeah, no matter how many times the Pacers challenge the Heat, we still just forget about them. I want to talk about the Nets or the Knicks or someone, but they're always there.
But to answer the question, the Heat are going to get a three-peat this year.
Absolutely.
Probably, yes.
I see them ending up better than Jordan's Bulls. LeBron, he's that. If they keep the same core of guys, I don't know who can beat them.
His contract's ending up after this year.
That's true. I don't know why he would go anywhere else, but.
Well, we've had a pretty interesting discussion so far, but we have 3 more topics to get back to, so we're going to take a quick commercial break.
I'm Dr. David Valentine in computer science.
I'm Nick Jones, public health major.
I'm Dr. John Buttermore, School of Business.
Sue Zerpeli in the chemistry department.
Kirk Schimmel, the Dean of the College of Business, Information, and Social Sciences.
My name's Alyssa Posman, and I'm an early childhood major.
Marilyn, and and I work in the communication department.
I'm Ian Maynard. I'm a computer science major.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I work here as a team member at Rock and Yogurt, and I'm also a student at Slippery Rock. We were established in May of 2013. We offer different flavors of yogurt. We are located on Main Street of Slippery Rock and are right across the street from North Country Brewery. We have traditional flavors like vanilla and chocolate, and we also offer unique flavors like cinnamon, maple bacon donut, pumpkin, and blueberry.
All right, welcome back, everyone. We have a couple more topics. We're going to start with the NFL. The Redskins safety, Brandon Merriweather, has been one of the most fined and suspended players in the league for helmet-to-helmet hits. This week, he was quoted as saying, "I guess I have to take out guys' knees." Dave, what are your thoughts on this situation?
I mean, I do think he is kind of a dirty player, but you can tell he's just aggravated because if you can't hit him one way, and I guess you got to hit him another way, and that's basically he's basically like kind of like tampering with what they're trying to tell him to do. Really, you want to hit in the abdomen area, but he's saying if you can't hit high, I guess you got to hit low and take out their knees. So, and honestly, just Brendan Merriweather just needs to maybe just cool down a little bit because Ndamukong Suh has done dirtier stuff, and I'm surprised he hasn't even gotten a suspension yet. But for Brandon Merriweather, just being aggravated for maybe being the first player suspended for helmet-to-helmet contacts, and maybe that aggression is coming out. But just don't get me wrong, he's still a dirty player, but I just think he's just picking and choosing the words and then just like kind of turning it around saying, oh, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to do this and still going to get fined.
See, that's what I think the big difference is, though, between like him and Ndamukong Suh. Ndamukong Suh is a dirty player.
Mm-hmm.
He stomped on a guy's leg. He with Jake Delhomme, had him around the neck and just slammed him to the ground. They weren't like him making a tackle.
Stomped on a dude's shoulder.
Yeah. Brandon Merriweather is just laying hard hits and their helmets happen to collide. It doesn't ever look like he's targeting their head.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you've got a receiver coming and a defensive back coming and just, it happens. And that's what I hate about this. I mean, obviously you're trying to prevent injuries, you're trying to prevent concussions. But I think they're doing the complete opposite because, like he said, players are just going to start targeting knees because they want to because even if you go for the chest, how many times have you seen the ball carrier lower their head and initiate the helmet-to-helmet contact? But who gets the repercussions for that? The defender. So you're going to go as low as possible to stay away from that head, and that's the knees. And we're seeing more leg and knee and ACL injuries than ever, and that's why, because that's where guys have to target. They have no other choice. They're taking money out of their pockets. I mean, that's the only way to avoid it. It really is.
And the NFL also put the ban on blocking as a running back head first. I do believe.
Well, and it's running too. It's just as a ball carrier, they can't deliver a hit with the crown of their helmet once they're more than 3 yards downfield or outside of the tackle box.
And the NFL is trying to prevent that, but I, like you said, I don't think we've seen a running back get any kind of fine or suspension for that yet. We just see the defense players. I think it's a little like James Harrison. I never thought James Harrison was that dirty of a player when he was on Pittsburgh or even this year on the Bengals. I don't think he's that dirty of a player. He just gets in bad situations sometimes.
And
he built up that reputation. He built up that reputation. He had a couple dirty hits in his career. Yeah. And when you do that, you get your reputation, and then everything you do that's close to a dirty hit gets judged as a different level
and then
than every other player.
When you do what him and what Merriweather do, and you question the authority, that's when they start to look at you as a dirty player because you're upset with how they're handling you with a couple unfortunate hits. I mean, that's really the biggest. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest reasons Ndamukong Suh hasn't gotten in as much trouble is because whenever he does get in trouble, he kind of just takes it. He doesn't really run his mouth. He doesn't really, argue. I think Merriweather has appealed every one of his fines, and I think his suspension got lowered from 2 games to 1 game.
Yeah, it did.
So I mean, I think he's appealed every sort of penalty he's had brought on to him. But like I said, I think it's these rules of helmet-to-helmet contact are forcing the defenders to go low because you want to get as far away from the head as possible.
If you can get a hold of the legs, you basically have a tackle. So They're not saying just go for the knees, but if you get a hold of the legs, it's a much easier tackle than trying to hit him at the head.
Yeah.
Like you see all the time, even guys miss tackles because they go for the chest and the running back's stronger than them. Or if they had just wrapped up the legs, it'd taken them down real easily. But that does cause injuries. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see if there's further penalties or any other incidents this year.
Another big story in the NFL is the Kansas City Chiefs. They continued their undefeated streak by beating the Cleveland Browns yesterday, 23-17. Ryan, do you think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL right now?
This is a hard one because the common euphemism is offense wins games, defense wins championships. So they're 8-0. They have probably, if not the best, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Fantasy football says they have the best, but that's all based on numbers. But they have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Their offense isn't necessarily lighting the world on fire, but they're getting just enough to get the job done, just like Alex Smith does every other time he's ever played well in his career. Does just enough to get the job done. Nothing more, nothing less, really, which doesn't really hurt the team. I mean, they're 8-0. And they have a really good coach in Andy Reid. I think Reid in his first few years with the Eagles was really good. His first few years with the Chiefs will be pretty good. Maybe as it goes down the line, he won't be. That's a different story. But I think the Broncos are still a better team, and that's going to be settled when they actually play each other. As we talked about a few weeks ago, I believe, we talked about that matchup. When both were still undefeated, obviously Denver lost to Indianapolis 2 weeks ago. But I do think the Chiefs are one of the best teams in the NFL. They're definitely one of the top contenders in the AFC, and I think a lot of people, despite that 8-0 record now, no matter what happens the rest of the season, even if unless they go 16-0, people are going to sleep on them in the playoffs, and I think that's really where their advantage is, because not a lot of people seem to notice them, even though they have the best record in the NFL right now.
The thing is, you look at the Chiefs; they've had one opponent score more than 20 points against them. The Denver Broncos have had every opponent except for one score over 20 points against them, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars, only scoring 19. So you could compare this even to the Slippery Rock and IUP matchup. Best defense, best offense, who's going to win what, and past experience would say the Denver Broncos would beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But with the core of guys that the Chiefs have, with the personnel change in the coaching, like in the locker room and all that, I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Broncos at Kansas City. I think it's going to be different in Denver because Denver has the Mile High Stadium, even though that's not what it's called anymore, but I still call it the Mile High Stadium, and having that home field atmosphere with them really helps their just will to win, because you saw they were down 21-7 and scored 38 unanswered against the Redskins, 31 of them being in the fourth quarter. So I think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL because they haven't lost. So, I mean, that's always a good thing to keep on your resume. And just their defense is stacked, and their offense is doing just enough to win the game. And if you're doing just enough to win the game, then why aren't you considered the best team in the National Football League? The Broncos killed all their opponents, but they lost to another opponent, and that was the Colts. So you got to think, are the Colts maybe better than the Broncos? So why should the Broncos be up on number one? That's why I think the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL.
See, the problem I have with considering the Chiefs the best in the NFL, despite being 8-0, it kind of goes with that kind of college football BCS thing. Mm-hmm. The combined record of the teams they've beaten is like 20-44. They haven't played anybody.
Yep.
And they've still only squeaked out wins. They beat the Texans by a point in the last minutes. They beat the Browns. The Browns aren't a terrible team, but they're not a good team. Yeah. I mean, they've got a decent defense. They have no run game on offense, and they still barely lost to the Chiefs. I mean, the Chiefs have squeaked out wins week after week against losing teams. So when they come up against someone like the Broncos, I don't see them matching up. That's the only reason despite that 8-0 record, I can't consider them the best team in the NFL because they just really haven't played anybody. And that's why I would definitely look at Denver or Seattle before I would look at them because, Seattle shuts everyone down. I think they have even a better defense than Kansas City, and I think they have a more explosive offense. We've seen them put up a lot of points. So they can stop teams and they can put up a lot of points if need be. And I think that's where the big difference is going to come in when you look at best team in the NFL. So that's the only reason. I mean, they're obviously up there. They're 8-0. I mean, they're going to either, take the division or take the wild card. But I just can't consider them best team in the NFL because they really haven't played anybody.
The World Series between the Boston Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals has already been filled with lots of excitement. After a controversial call ended Game 3 and a pick-off to end Game 4, the series is tied at 2 games apiece. Cameron, what are your thoughts for the rest of the series?
My thoughts, like you said, it's already been an amazing series so far, and I only think it's going to get better. Game 5 tonight with Lester and Wainwright going again, and that Game 1 where they went up against each other was the only game that wasn't a tight game, and that was just because of the miscommunications with the infield. Wainwright just struggled. And how often have you ever seen Wainwright have 2 bad games back to back? Not often. So I definitely think this game tonight is going to be a really tight game, and I think the rest of the series is going to be very tight. And I mean, like we saw with Game 3, it came down to that call at third base, but Saltamacchia probably shouldn't have thrown the ball, so that kind of cost them. And it's just been somebody different every night stepping up and delivering. It was Johnny Gomes in Game 4 with the big 3-run homer. So it's just each night it's somebody else stepping up and being the hero, and it's just such a fun series to watch. Mm-hmm. When your team's out of the playoffs, you just want to see a good series, and that's this could be one of the best World Series I've ever seen. And I just think it's really exciting.
Yeah, certainly it's one of the best, and as we talked about last week, we said the actual 2 best teams in both leagues are playing each other, and that's what you get. You saw it last year in the NBA with the Spurs and the Heat. Spurs arguably were the best team in the West, but they were the 2 best teams at that time. And when the 2 actual best teams meet each other, whether it's because one team's hot in the playoffs or whatever, when they meet each other, it's usually a very good series. I think this series might go all the way to 7. I think. When was the last time we saw a 7-game World Series?
In 2011.
2011, right.
With the Cardinals.
With the Cardinals. So the Cardinals are used to this game.
Yeah.
They've done this before. The Red Sox do have a lot of players who are on the last 2 World Series squads, but at the same time they do have a lot of new players as well. So it'll be interesting to see how that mix will occur. But at the same time, the Cardinals have been here before. They contend every year. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that slightly less experienced Red Sox squad goes the rest of the way, the next between 2 and 3 games. So.
And you guys mentioned this is probably the best World Series, and kind of, yes, but I still think 2011 is so much of a better series because, as Bob Ryan put it going into this series, a Boston Globe reporter, this series is going to be determined by flukes and lucky plays. And my God, has he been correct so far. And it makes the series more exciting, but the best World Series has to be the 2011 World Series between the Cardinals and the Rangers just because of all what went down, just timely hitting and clutch hitting. And you saw that yesterday in Game 4 with Johnny Gomes. First hit of the series was a 3-run blast to give them the lead after the big team meeting during the game with Big Papi. And as Dustin Pedroia put it, it's like 24 kindergartners listening to a teacher at that point, the way he was just talking. If they could understand him or not, we don't know that. But I think this series is going to go to 7 games. And since the beginning of the series, I said Boston in 7, and I thought they were going to flip-flop through each game, but I saw the pitching matchup in Game 3, and I said with Joe Kelly, I think the Cardinals were going to win that. And on a fluke play, they did. Whether I think Saltamacchia should have thrown it because you had the runner dead to rights there, and then last game, Colton Wong I do think was out, and that was just a good pickoff move because they got him leaning there a little bit. But I think the Red Sox are going to take it today. Cardinals are going to rebound. The Cardinals haven't lost back-to-back World Series games since 2004 when they lost to the Red Sox. And I think they're going to win Game 6, and then it's going to come down to Game 7 again.
Yeah, I think getting back to Fenway I think having that home field advantage is huge because I think the Cardinals really thrive in their park, but I think Boston really, really benefits from being at Fenway. Yeah. And that's what I love about, with the All-Star game in baseball. It actually means something, It actually, holds some factor later on in the game, so it gives them some reason to actually make it competitive,
Boston in 7. Boston strong.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we have for you guys tonight. Thanks for watching. For Cameron Collins, Ryan Noblet, and Big Dave Miller, I'm your host, Kristen Karam, and we'll see you guys next week.